Welcome to Breakaway, the minor hockey podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Wilbur, founder of the Coaches Site, and as always, I'm joined by the executive director of the Ontario Minor Hockey Association, Mr. Ian Taylor. Ian, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, I'm good. I know you were traveling in the last couple weeks, and you were actually out here, and we didn't connect, but which I feel bad about. But I know you had a busy go. Hosting an event with the Coaches Site in Kitchener, but I also saw pictures of you in Joe Louis, which I'm very intrigued about, since I am a bit of a Red Wing fan, and now Showtime Patrick Kane is in Detroit. I know you were just before that, but yeah. So I saw those pictures on Twitter and looked like a pretty good trip.
It was, and yeah, sorry I missed you in Ontario, but we did an event with the Kitchener Rangers.
Yeah.
So their new coach, UC Alohas, he's from Finland. Previously coached Finland's U20 team to a gold medal at the World Juniors. Was the top coach in Europe a couple of years ago. So great pickup by the Rangers.
Yeah.
And so it was neat. We did a kind of a Kitchener Rangers coaching day. We invited some of our the associations that we work with in Ontario, many of whom are members of the OMHA, their hockey directors, some of their coaches to come out, and they got to watch a practice. They got a tour of the Rangers facilities, which when you talk about arenas, like we'll talk about the Little Caesars Arena, the Odd's awesome. It's just, it is.
It's a little Maple Leaf Gardens. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. It's such a great barn, and they've done such a great job there. So we did that. And then we did a live podcast with him and just breaking down kind of his coaching journey, and obviously a ton of great insights. So that'll come out on the Glass and Out podcast, I think next week.
Nice.
But that's coming down the pipe. And then, my oldest guy. So for all of our listeners, I've got a big guy who just turned, or is about to turn 21. And I've got a little guy who just turned 5. So just want to ensure that I never have any time to myself ever.
Exactly. Been there, done that.
Yeah. And so we did a little. He played football growing up, so we did a little for his birthday. We went and saw the Lions and Packers on Thanksgiving. So that was great. And then on the Friday, we did the tour. Dwayne Blaze, who's the development coach for the Wings and a good pal. He took us for a tour of their new facility, it's so interesting and I wonder how many. I've talked to a few coaches in the NHL that are in new rinks where the practice rink is a part of the, where they play.
Yeah.
So they have one sort of central space or locker room, and they've all said it's a game changer. Like, it seems obvious now, like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
But so their practice rink is underneath the big rink. And if you ask me to like draw it on a piece of paper, like how we got from one place, and because all I know is like we were like well underground in the practice rink, we walked into the Wings locker room. It didn't feel like we went up or down.
Yeah.
But the tour ended with us walking out to the Wings bench.
Brilliant.
And I was like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
But it's massive. Like the facility is like, it's the size of a mall.
Yeah.
It's the size of a mall. Like when you take in like the players' lounge, we met the chef. They've got a huge kitchen. There's the gym. The coach's office is probably the square footage of my house. Not like it, no joke. And they've all had these huge ceilings, and they were saying that they've just done, like, it's a pretty new facility. They've just done some recent renovations. They got like special carpet. But you know what was really cool though? They've done an amazing job within those walls of capturing the history of the Red Wings, from a wall with all the old logos to like,
that's cool. There
was like some pictures. You just think back to what it must have been like in the original 6 days when, players used to travel on trains.
Yeah.
Think about that. But then they have the pictures of like, they've got the old jets, like the players getting on where they've got like the little like wheelie stairs, and they're going up, and they got the propellers on the plane, and all the guys are dressed like they're, like
suited up,
kind of. Yeah. Like,
sure.
Yeah. They look like $1 million. And so that was really cool to just sort of see the heritage and appreciate, especially for anybody that's gone to Detroit. I mean, that city is very much reinventing itself, but
Right.
at one time, I forget, it was the second biggest city in the United States. It was probably the economic driver of North America. There was Motown, there was the Wings, and I'm like, man, it must have been a scene. I'm just thinking, like, you're Gordie Howe, some kid from the prairies in Canada, and you land here back in the 50s. It must have really pinned your hair back.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's brilliant. I mean, everything I've seen about their facility is awesome. I also think where we were able to, we went to the World Championships in the spring
Yeah.
in Tapara, and we never got to see their practice rink, but my understanding it was the same deal. They had the practice rink was
Got it.
below
Yeah.
the main rink, and then they've got the two big teams playing
Yes.
out of that same facility, which just brings a whole nother level to it, right?
I'm sure every trainer of every professional sports team is
would say,
strongly
yes, please.
advocating.
Yeah,
I just feel like, what another
yeah,
layer of your job, having to move the gear,
yeah.
not only just on the road, but for every practice.
No, that's good.
Um, yeah,
That's
no, that
good.
was good. And then we went to Michigan, Ohio State,
Oh,
on the Saturday, which was like the football. Like, I can't even put it into words. Like,
that's a
what
great
a
trip.
cool experience. And my son, we were like walking towards the big house, and there was a bit of it's a zoo, but like some security guard puts his arm, he blocks him, and there was like so College Game Day was there, and all the
Ah,
personalities from that show were walking by, and so Pat McAfee walked,
nice.
about a foot and a half away from him, and like, here's my almost 21-year-old son, who is very, like, he's, in his eyes, I think, is too cool for school,
Oh,
and
yeah.
basically turned into like a 13-year-old girl that got within a foot of Taylor Swift. It was
Love it.
just made a day. Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, great trip, and was fun
Love
to
it.
get out there, and
Yeah, good for you.
more sports. And I will also, yeah, this might be interesting to the listeners. It's coming out, I think, at the time when this podcast comes out, it will be released on the podcast. We came back and we did an event in Vancouver here with Bruce Cassidy of the Vegas Golden Knights. Had a chance to sit down with him sort of in a very private setting, and invited some local people from the Vancouver business and tech community, and just talked leadership. And it was,
Cool.
man, what a Ontario boy, just incredibly humble, and really gain an appreciation. This is someone that's worked their tail off for everything they've gone. So that was
Yeah,
great.
I think I mentioned to you before. My eldest son Brendan, he went to a coaching clinic or
Yes.
a talk before, and then
Yes.
they were able to break into smaller groups, and basically, you know, kind of roundtable with coaches, and he had an opportunity to do with Bruce Cassidy. And he said it was just like, what do you got? Like, just, you know,
Open
anything
book, man.
goes, and it's just
Yeah.
like boom, 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 and like, take advantage of that opportunity. But he said he was like one, he was into it, which makes all the difference, right? Like,
Totally.
he was into it, and like up for it, like so it wasn't just taking questions, would be like asking questions back. Well, so like when you get into that kind of environment, and again, it all comes down to the willingness of, Stanley Cup champion coach now, right? But just putting himself in other people's shoes and knowing where he's come from. And I mean,
That's
he's an
exactly
NHL
it. That's
player,
somebody
but
that
you
can
know what I
relate
mean?
to the people. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And
So that's so cool. I love it.
yeah, yeah. No, it was really, really good. But what what's interesting is, so we were going back and forth last night on just sort of some of the topics that were top of mind for us for
Right.
today's episode, and you brought up neck guards,
Yeah.
which I think we can all understand that, just not just in youth hockey, but all hockey right now is really being dissected.
Sure.
And what was interesting is, so on Mondays, my little guy does skating lessons, and so he goes out there. He's got a helmet, he's got gloves, he obviously has his skates on, and then we put him in a snow pants. He doesn't wear shin pads, but he's got like snow pants to keep him warm, and in case he falls, there's a little bit of pad. He's got a Wings jersey. He's got a Datsuk jersey. That's
Very
his
good.
squad.
Love
So
it.
that was neat. But I don't know why they were doing this, but they've got like kind of the main woman who runs the program, and they've got some younger girls that kind of take these groups, and they're doing this drill with Austin's group, and where they're like skating as fast as they can, then they're sliding, and they're all sliding together. And I'm having this moment. I'm like, oh my god, he doesn't have a neck guard. And one, I think I don't know why they were making them slide. Like it made no sense. Probably should have gone to the bottom of that. But I'm just watching this, and I'm like, oh my god, like he doesn't have a neck guard. And I just thought to myself, I felt this. As a parent, sometimes you have this feeling like, oh my god, like I'm not doing this right,
Hmm. Sure.
or I'm not doing my job. And I had one of those moments. And I think that, one thing I'll say when it comes to this whole neck guard issue is, as parents, if anything ever happens to your kid, like you're not going to care about the statistics. Like
Right.
if somebody came to you and said, well, there was only a 1 in 500,000 chance that this could happen, like you're not going to care. It's your kid. They're hurt. And I just had this moment. I'm like, yeah, like I'm my kid's not stepping on the ice again without a neck guard.
Right. Right. It's so obviously it's been in the news, but let me go back to your skating example. And first thing this is my own skating hack is I had my guys wear shin pads. So that was
Okay.
so I had them wear shin pads because
Okay.
when they fell down,
Yeah.
it hurt, right? So
Sure.
So then it's like, well, maybe I don't want to skate because it hurts when I skate. So it's like, take away that sensation, reaction,
Yeah.
and then they're going to want to skate. They're not going to, again, your example of their sliding, whether that's for them to be comfortable on the ice or for them learning how to get up, but I'm coming at it strictly from this sounds bad, just that they'll keep skating, right? Like like from you're going to learn to skate point of view. You're not a safety point of view. You're coming at it when you're looking at this through much clearer eyes, obviously, than I did. That you're looking at it as a safety concern, right? So two totally different ways of looking at the similar situation, but context,
But
right?
it is a safety concern, right?
Yeah,
Like because anything is, to your point, like you're putting the shin guards on them so they don't hurt their knees, because if they hurt their knees, they might not want to continue skating.
correct.
And I would say it's like, this is a really stupid example or analogy, but it's like my kid has Minions toothpaste, and he's got a Batman toothbrush.
Sure.
Doesn't affect the quality of him brushing his teeth, but it kind of gets him to brush his teeth.
Correct.
Like, who cares? And if you got to wear shin pads for your kid to keep skating, great call. And at the same token, at this age, and I think this is where we have to sort of look in the mirror as parents. Like, my son is only going to have an issue wearing a neck guard if I have an issue with him wearing a neck guard. He doesn't care.
Right.
It doesn't bother him one bit.
Right.
But it will if I make a big deal of it. He'll make a big deal. It'll be a thing for him.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think when we're talking about the neck guard, or I mean safety in general, safety is, and again this comes back to us talking about attracting people to the game, whether they're new to the game or not, but just as you just said, parents want their kids to be safe, right? They want them to be safe. They want to feel good about putting them out on the ice, and then kids obviously, they want to enjoy what they're doing, and if they're hurt, they're less likely to enjoy it. So there's no question it's been brought up as being a barrier to participation, safety in general, and
100%.
right, and we have we have rules, policies about things like mandatory neck guards. So that's for us across the country. That's a mandatory Hockey Canada rule. You have to wear a certified BNQ certified
Can't do like the roll it up and tape it like the kids like to do. You got to
That,
wear it properly. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. And it's so that's throughout minor hockey. And sometimes again, these are terrible ways. I mean, the current situation, why this has come into the spotlight is tragic. But you need reminders of why do we have these things in place. And to your point, it came rushing into your mind during a learn to skate session. It wasn't even a
Yeah.
hockey session.
Yeah. Totally. And you just, you touch on, and I listen, I don't think we need to relive it. I'm
Yeah,
sure most people are either familiar and some of us saw it. It was just heartbreaking.
yeah.
But I would say that this probably speaks to the culture of our sport as well. We only make changes when things go really, really wrong.
Hmm.
Like, when's the last time hockey made a change because they were progressive and they got ahead of something and said, hey, like nothing's happened, but we just think that with the information we have now, with the technology we have now, we just think this is a better way forward.
Yeah, yeah. In this situation, it's interesting. The IIHF came out yesterday with they're going to require it at um, all of their events. So they had required it previously. U17, U18, U20. But they're going to make it mandatory for world championships now. So that'll be a group of players who are predominantly, well, they'll all be pro players, many of them NHL players. That'll be a change for them. And you know, what this was one of those situations where I was like, as you say, like something bad happens, and then
Yeah.
and then we got to chase a solution or chase a remedy.
Yeah.
And I can say in this case, it was like I felt good about, okay, we already require that. Like, that's good. Like,
For sure. Yeah.
that's something we can speak to in terms of, again, in terms of this barrier when people see this, this outcome, and we can say, no, it sounds bad to say we were already doing it, but we were already doing it. And not just the OMHA, Hockey Canada. I and like I say, all the way through junior, like through junior hockey. um um this has been in place. So it's all those things go through your mind. And like I say, from our point of view, is like, oh, I'm glad we already have this in place. We've got to, make so now we go into, let's make sure people are wearing them properly, to your point about taping them. Let's make sure kids are coaches and trainers are making sure they're being worn at practice, not just games where a referee is making sure, you know it's being worn properly. Like, that we maybe have some communication and a reminder on why why we do have equipment, because
Yeah.
this is a collision sport. We often talk about this, body contact, body checking. Well, it's a collision sport. It can be collisions at your learn to skate program for Austin. If a bunch of them all collide in the corner, it's a
If
collision sport.
anybody's seen 4 and 5-year-olds on the ice together,
Right.
like collisions are like,
It's inherent.
yeah, it's part of the production. Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
happen. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
so that's our sport. Like, we,
And they have no, like, and sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah,
like, just to point out, my son, along with all the other kids on the ice, they're not mindful of the fact that they have razor sharp blades on their
of
skates when
course
they're out
not.
there, or when they fall down or they're sliding. They think that they
Well,
doesn't occur.
like I say, like, I'm thinking, the sliding. Maybe there's a fun component to it, but I'm thinking at some point I got to get up off the ice. So maybe that's the lesson being taught. But I just think, again, without anything to do with, now we go into a hockey environment. There are collisions. So we talk to kids about being aware and having a way, in and out of a corner. Um, Again, making yourself square, or your shoulders, square, so you can see. But that's getting into, there's a body checking element of that. But like I say, there's just an awareness element where you are on the ice, where other people are, but there's going to be collisions, right? And knowing that, and the collisions happen at practice with your own teammates. So again, knowing that we're wearing the equipment, that one, we have safety measures in place, but then we're also diligent in making sure we're wearing them properly. That sort of thing is just these are reminders, right? And these should be evergreen reminders. So that's something we talk about here. Like, we talk about what's required, and you got to have this, and we have other things, the coaches having to wear helmets on the ice. It's a safety issue, you know
That's a perfect example, because in this case, like I was, and I'm putting my hand up here,
yeah.
that I was one of the schmucks who, when that happened, was like, I don't have to wear a helmet, and I probably got a few emails from like the rink, and then my like, why, like, just wear your helmet.
Yeah, come
And
on.
I finally had to like look in the mirror and be like, how immature are you?
Right.
Like,
Right.
it doesn't affect a goddamn thing of what you're doing on the ice. And now I don't think about it now.
Right.
But there was a moment where I really dug my heels in on that one.
Yeah.
Embarrassed to say it, but I did.
No, and
Stupid.
Aaron, you know what? You're not alone, and it still happens, quite honestly. But again, that was a result of, again, another bad situation that happened on the ice, and again, brought forward, because who knows when the kid's sliding on the ice, and you know um,
Yeah.
you don't know what's coming. They've fallen. It's not on purpose. And again, we have lots of volunteers of all different skating levels, and there's where it's different. People think, oh, I'm a pretty good skater, but that really has nothing to do with it,
The
right?
kid slides behind you and you don't realize it's there, and you
No
trip and
idea.
fall. It's happened to every coach, where you just, and I mean, gosh, I'm sure you've seen or heard of instances where you are. I mean, we've had issues where, like, coaches have had to stop working because of concussion issues, because they fall on the ice. And like, these are like former, like really good hockey players.
Yeah.
And so just these things happen. Although I will say this, if I had Jimmy Johnson hair like you, I'd have an even tougher time wearing a
Oh, no, no,
helmet on
I'm a
the ice.
big,
I would never
I
want to
love,
cover up
you know
that.
what? It's so funny.
I never want to cover
I
up.
appreciate it. I love wearing a helmet. I love, I do. I do. I'm a gear guy. So I
Helmet
like,
guy.
oh yeah, yeah. I do like gear. There's no question. Um,
But
let,
go
let me
ahead.
let me throw one more
Yeah, yeah,
at you,
yeah.
because we also have different rules. So in the OMHA, we have a requirement to wear a mouth guard, and a mouth guard isn't, that one isn't a Hockey Canada rule. So it's not
I
necessarily,
didn't know that. Okay.
yeah. So it's not across the board. But it's one we brought in, and it's interesting that one's been one that we implemented. Boy, I mean, years ago, like 20 plus years ago, and uh, uh, a lot of it early on was about concussion, and there's been studies now that say that mouth guard doesn't necessarily prevent concussion, or there's nothing that says definitively you're not going to get this because you're wearing this piece of equipment. But in our case, what we decided is one, um, there's everything from, as you said, concussion, chipped teeth, that sort of stuff. Um, just if it creates any more of a, um, safety environment, is that the right word, or a safety tool, then we've decided, then that's good. We're gonna keep that. We're gonna keep that in place. So, but it's interesting. It's interesting where, like in that case, like I say, it's not universal. But now we're seeing that with the neck guard, and I'm not saying everyone's got to adopt what we adopt. I'm just sharing, kind of, that's part of the thought process in implementing these sorts of things, and the direction of, that's the direction we took, is that
Yeah.
we think at the end of it's not going to create any more harm, so we're hopefully, there's some benefit, whether it's definitive or not, towards a specific injury. You know what I mean?
So lots to unpack there. So I'll ask you this,
Yeah,
Ian.
yeah, shoot.
Let's go through some of we'll call them like the safety measures in our sport.
Yeah.
Does anybody today, do you ever everybody at the ring and say, you know what, like, why are our kids wearing helmets?
Yeah.
Never, right? Like nobody's ever said that. Um,
No, but Aaron, I'm gonna date myself. My first year of hockey, I didn't wear a face mask. My first
that
year.
was gonna be that
My
was gonna be the
second
next one
year,
I was gonna bring up.
it
It's
came in.
like,
So
but no nobody like. Do you ever have you ever gone to the rink and you hear parents in the
yeah,
stands saying, "Gosh, like why? Like isn't it kind of silly? Our kids are wearing face masks. Like it's so obvious that that's the way to do it." And my point is that I think in all these sort of safety precautions, well, in the moment there might have been a little bit of pushback or people questioning the rationale. I can't think of one that today that has been implemented where people still question it. Like it's just been accepted. It hasn't affected the quality of the game. And a really good example. So out here in
yeah,
BC,
yeah.
and I believe this is a hockey. I was just chatting with somebody about it yesterday, but in junior hockey now, some leagues have been grandfathered, but like at the junior A level, I know in the Ontario Junior A League, for example, the players wear cages, right?
Full
Well, that's not
full
the case in like
full
all the
mask.
Western Junior A leagues.
Yep,
But I
yep.
know the junior B leagues in BC went to full mass. Gosh, I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago. A big reason was like they saved a ton of money on their
Insurance.
insurance.
Yeah,
Insurance, yeah, it was massive.
yeah.
And
Totally.
but what's interesting is so many people. I can remember it. So many people, and I was one of them. I was like, "That's not junior hockey.
Yeah,
Junior hockey, you wear a half shield
yeah,
because that's what junior hockey is. It's all about silly, right? Like stupid."
yeah, yeah.
But at the time, so many people. Well, guess what? I was talking to a friend of mine that owns a team in Revelstoke. They've got a great little setup there, and I'm like, does this affect you at all? He's like, no, like this hasn't affected our attendance. Like people still love coming out to watch the hockey. Earlier this year, I was down in North Dakota watching NCAA hockey. They were it
Full.
was like it
Yeah,
was physical. It was
sure.
everything you want the game to be. Never even occurred to me in the moment at all. Like, gosh, this game would just be so much better if I could see these players from the nose down.
Well, the top level of female hockey, right? Like our national team,
Yeah,
the newly launched, is it
PWHL.
PWHL? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Your point is a good one. It's I this boy, we can get into a whole conversation of managing change, which our sport isn't good at, but I don't think any sport is good at. If you look at you know I know you're a big NFL football fan. you know, uh, Referees are taking a beating there right now. Um, Officials and video review and soccer is a whole thing right now. But so so we're not great at change. But your point of beyond that initial introduction or the purpose behind it. You're bang on, and again we go back to why why do we have kids participate in activities, skating, sports, hockey, right? We want them to be active. We want that, we've, boy, in this podcast we've talked about, especially over COVID, mental well-being,
Yeah.
physical well-being, social interaction, skill, life lessons. We've run the gamut. But they have but they have to be safe or you're not bringing them back.
Well, here's a really good example. And again, I hate to bring up Adam Johnson, but this is the experience of how I learned about this incident.
Mm,
We practice Saturday afternoons and we practice early on Sunday mornings.
mm,
My son last year went to a daycare that was run by a woman, older woman from the Ukraine.
right.
So there's a bit of a Ukraine community here in Squamish, where I'm from, and my guy Ozzy became best friends with this little boy named Miran, whose family immigrated from Kiev. Heartbreaking story. Like literally, like they've shown me like where they used to live. There's like a missile hole through their apartment. Had to leave the grandparents. So they come over here. Our kids become friends. We're obviously, I think like a lot of people, you're just trying to make them feel welcome and get them acclimated. They start to learn that Ozzy plays this game called hockey, which they kind of are familiar with, but you know,
Yeah. No
not very.
direct connection. Yeah.
So we get him going in the skating club, and this year he starts to play hockey. Miran loves hockey. He's
Love it.
improved so much; it's awesome. and it's been so good for him. It's great for the family, like all the things that we love. Like everything that you think
Yes.
about our sport's supposed to do, it's amplified here because they're making friends. The parents are making friends. It's a 10 out of 10
Community. Yeah.
until
Love it.
until after our Sunday morning practice. We had invited Miran and his dad over for pancakes,
Love it.
and so we're in the kitchen. Broken English. Miran's dad says, "Did you see the injury in the British League?" And I'm like, "No, like, what are you talking about?" And he goes, "I'll show you." And he shows me the video. I have no idea what's about to unfold in the video. I'm shocked. And then I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. He's like, and I could see it. He's like, "Why is my kid playing this sport? Why did you advocate for my kid?" Like for him, this is like his first introduction. He's like he doesn't know that this is, an incredibly rare occurrence.
Yeah.
He's being a parent and he's thinking like, why am I letting my kid play a sport where this can happen? And I thought like that's not helping our sport. It's not helping our game. And so I look at things like, I know, for example, TJ Oshie has like the cut proof undergear.
Yeah.
And you know what? There was a time when that wasn't an option because it didn't exist.
Sure.
We didn't have cut proof. Kids wore their, like, I wore my pajamas when I grew up playing hockey.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now there's this technology that's available.
Yeah.
And at first the barrier was it was really expensive. It's becoming a little less expensive as things do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder, like, what are the other things that we can do and or make mandatory, like your mouth guard piece? Like,
Yeah.
those are, they're accessible now.
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
I just wonder, what are some other things from a safety perspective that we can implement, especially with the skates? Because I mean, I can tell you in my coaching career, I've seen a kid get a skate to the cheek and like wide open,
Yeah.
awful. I was at like a scouting camp once when I was coaching junior. I saw a goalie, kid slid into him, slit his wrist. Like I literally had to go in there. I can remember the trainer had me like reach in, grab the artery, and hold each side, and he goes, "Just squeeze as hard as you can."
Wow.
Until the ambulance arrived. And so again, this is me sharing my stories of, been doing this for, gosh, almost 25 years, and it's rare. But again, in the moment, like nobody cares about the statistics.
No.
When it happens to you, or more important, it happens to your kid. So I just think that at some point, I really hope that hockey as a whole becomes proactive. And I would commend you for the mouth guards and some of these other things. Like these are, again, in hindsight, nobody ever complains about these things. They all,
yeah. It's the under gear is a really interesting one, and I've seen more companies coming out with, I'm going to say it's Kevlar. That's one, fabric that I know has been used. I know there's other ones now, but you saw a similar thing with after Erik Karlsson got cut on the back of the leg, right? So now they started making hockey socks with that. So now I don't want to say mandating that or requiring that. I don't know how difficult that would be because you don't know what's under everyone's equipment. But it's interesting, and it's interesting from an education point of view and just sharing that, right? But certainly like hockey socks with this fabric has become, you see a lot of kids wearing them now, practice socks, that sort of thing. I'm trying to think the other things we do. Here's one, and I want your thoughts on this one, because this one kind of goes in a funny cycle. So for goalies need to wear again a neck guard or a throat protector. Those terms kind of get used interchangeably. But for goalies in the OMHA, we also require them to wear. Some people call them the dangler. Some people call them the billy goat. I
know what you mean. They're like the plastic. Yeah.
That kind of hangs off the mask in front of. So we require that too, and that's a funny one because that one seems to, like I say, kind of go cyclically. That when they first became, I don't know, you remember, like there was an iTech one. It could be different colors. Then there was clear ones, and Patrick Waugh wore one right back in the day, and then but it seemed to kind of go away a little bit. And then
Yeah.
and then it kind of comes back. And again, what we're talking about internally is the need to, again, be evergreen about saying, these are the things that we have. This is why we have them. But once in a while we get emails, coach, player goalie didn't have it. And where does it say I gotta so now we're getting, it's not in the rule book, but it's an OMHA rule, you know what I mean? so
Yeah.
so we've got to get that messaging out, but that's one we require as well. So the throat
Yeah.
protector plus the, again, lack of a technical term, the dangler, we call it. So
It's interesting because I remember, like, as a kid, and I was a goalie, which I
yeah,
don't,
that's
don't
why I
like to,
asked.
I don't like to look back on it, but Patrick Waugh wearing it was probably a big reason why I felt comfortable wearing it.
Yeah, interesting.
And I would say, like, in running parallel of that today, it's the shot block protectors on skates,
Yeah,
where
sure.
I know that NHL owners really want to make them mandatory because they're investing millions of dollars in these
Yeah,
players, and it helps keep them on the ice.
sure.
And it's a competitive advantage. I know the NHLPA, they don't have full buy-in, so they won't sign off on it. But
Interesting.
it's funny because young players see the NHL players doing it, so they're like, oh, like I've seen kids are like, oh, like shop block.
Oh yeah,
I
I've
got
seen it
some of the
too.
skates because they're like, this is kind of cool now because the big guys do it. But again, that's just another thing. Like, I would say that that's probably a piece of technology where right now it's kind of expensive.
Right.
It's kind of, it's probably not as refined as it's going to be in, say, a couple of years. But I wonder, that's probably another area of safety. It's, again, where do we get ahead on that? And I wonder, like, it's funny. Goalie skates look totally different today. They used to have
Totally.
those like white moldings around, and I'm like, okay, well, obviously there's something in those skates that protects
Sure.
the goalie's foot from pucks. When does that get introduced into the regular skates? And again,
Great
listen.
point.
We can't fault anybody for not making their kids wear seatbelts in their 30s, but we can today when they're available. Like, when it becomes available, it's like, hey, like,
It's a great example.
you know what I mean? Like, we have this technology, it's accessible, and it makes sense. But I can also appreciate, man, from your perspective, and I know we talk about this privately, and it's, I mean, you're managing the opinions of several 100,000 people with all these decisions you're making. So when I
Sure.
hear that you're doing stuff like making the mouth guards mandatory, or making the billy goat or the dangler
Yeah.
mandatory, I'm like, good on you, because I know, like, I know in your position, the easiest thing to do is to do nothing.
Yeah, it's I really credit, we've taken a real, like, development has meant something. And development, I mean hockey development here. And I will give, I'll give our board a lot of credit that I can't think of anything like that, where we brought it forward to the board, where they weren't, where it was like, basically, this is, um, going to make the game more safe for our participants, for our kids. And this predates this. I would say this predates, you know, um, registration campaigns and trying
Yeah.
to get in demographic shifts. It was simply about, if this is going to make the game, safer, and therefore kids are going to, play, and parents are going to feel, good about their kids playing. I can't think of one that where it wasn't supported. So there's definitely a mentality there and a mind shift. And again, I think it's crucial we keep in perspective, you know, um, this is kids activities, kids sport. That's first and foremost, is that
Yeah.
they have a good time. And again, there's as we talked about earlier, you're gonna get bumps and bruises. It is a collision sport. So understanding that, how do we mitigate risk, right, in the other areas? That's really what it's about. Mitigate that other stuff, knowing you and I are going to run into each other behind the neck because we don't have our head up, right? Like, that's going to happen. So
Yeah. Well, okay. So, Ian, great segue.
okay, running
So,
into each other.
No, I feel that's really yeah. Kids run into each other and learn to skate. Also on this podcast, that's also true. Um, Rick Westhead,
Yeah,
um, who is I, I know that some people maybe don't appreciate what he does or how he sometimes goes about his business. But I
fair,
will
fair,
say, and I think that's those are all
fair
I
comment.
respect all those comments.
Yeah,
But somebody in every realm or every industry, somebody's got to be the police, and somebody's got to hand out parking tickets. And Rick Westhead is kind of like the parking ticket police of hockey. But he sent out a tweet yesterday I thought was interesting, and this is close to home for you. So it says 1 in 3 coaches in Ontario are aware of hazing rituals within their club or organization, and 82% of coaches who are aware of hazing say it is a part of team building, quotation marks, according to a new survey released by the Coaches Association of Ontario. The survey reported only half of coaches in the province have completed some type of safe sport training. 1 in 3 coaches said they have not completed a background check or signed a code of conduct. Now, I will say this. I was very surprised to read the part about that they haven't completed the training, done the criminal background check, because I know in hockey, like I don't think it's an like that's a across the country thing. Like you don't even get on the ice. Like it's a non-negotiable. So certainly can't speak to other sports, but
right.
the hazing thing is, man, that's another thing where I every time I think like that's in the rear view, I'm like, we've moved past that.
Yeah.
It seems to come up again. And I'm like, oh, this is still going on.
You know, I read I read the same thing as you, and I would say Rick Westhead is the police in sport, not just hockey, but but
Yeah,
but
good point.
let's
Yeah.
but hockey is what it is. It carries a certain um, um, place in terms of it's big, it's Canadiana. Um, um, eh, do I want to say hockey gets clicks? Well, yeah, I think it does, but there's a spotlight on it. Maybe that's the best way to put it. So
Yeah.
so when
It
I
moves the
read that,
culture in Canada. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, sure. So like again, all the things we love about it, right? Like can also be um, it's challenges too. So
Yeah.
so so I read it the exact same way you did. So when I read it, yeah, it's incredibly concerning to still see um, that type of mentality, and that's happening now. I go back to my earlier point. The second comment you made is about coaches not having any training, and so then I go, okay, good. Like at least like we've checked, and I don't want this to be a box checking exercise, but we've checked that box. We've
No, but yeah, you have to, right? Like, but it's not checking a box; it's
it,
taking action.
it's not, and we've done it right. So we've
Yeah.
we've 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 got this in place. And again, we had Sheldon on a couple weeks ago, Sheldon Kennedy, and and you know talked about how hockey sometimes takes the brunt of things. Meanwhile, hockey has been a leader in this area, a leader in education. And what I would say, and then subsequently, so everybody who's rostered to a team across Canada, certainly in the OMHA, has got to take this training. And 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 now we have one parent from a household also has to take some education. So we've got that
Interesting.
in place, right? So again, I don't want this to be construed as we're covered. We've done these things, they're in place. But again, to just as we discussed, this has got to be an ongoing thing. It's got to be ongoing, um, shining a light on this, and ongoing um, sharing of if we've got the education covered, what's missing that this is still happening, right? So there's two things in my mind that are missing. Sheldon mentioned one a couple weeks ago:
I
empower
was
the
just going to
by
say it.
empower
Yeah.
the bystander. Got it. Like that is locked. That is engraved in my brain, right? empower the bystander, so people feel comfortable um, saying, "Hey, that's not acceptable. We don't do that here." Whether that's you're saying that within your own environment, or you're saying to someone else, again, it's a safety concern. I'm not sending my kid on the ice without a neck guard. Well, I'm also not sending him into this environment if I don't feel right about it. So,
Yeah.
so if there is a situation like that, what's the mechanism for a person, a parent, a coach, a player, anyone to be able to bring these things forward? And so that's where we've got to continue to do our work on, in terms of enforcing our code of conduct, um, making it a safe place for people to bring up issues, for them to be properly reviewed, investigated, that sort of thing. So I don't think there's ever a finish line with this, Aaron, because it's got to be ongoing. And you and I have talked about, education happens in schools. Like, we know this. Like, kids grow up with a phone in their pocket now, but they've been told about, you know online bullying from the time they were, I don't know, 8 years old, right? So so does that mean the education isn't working, or we got to continue just to kind of pound the rock here? Like, you
So,
continue doing it, right?
well, listen, we all know that exercising is good for us, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I, I have an up and down relationship with exercise.
Correct.
I'm on a heater right now,
Nice. Like to
but
hear it.
getting into the holidays. But I think sometimes we assume that just because we communicate a message,
Right.
that it's like, all right, that's done. That's sunken in. We're good. We don't have to touch on it again.
Yeah.
Clearly, a lot of things in life, like exercise and apparently team building and hazing, require some consistent reminders
Right.
of what's healthy and what isn't healthy. And I'm like curious, are you familiar with the book Atomic Habits by
Yeah.
James
Sure.
Clear?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of sort of the key principles he talks about in the book is like, if you smoke, you can't just go cold. You have to replace the habit with something else. You have to find a healthy outlet, whether that's because you eat a lot of junk food. Well, then you got to find something else, like a healthy snack. But that's part of his process for developing good habits. And I think, listen, I was a very below average junior hockey player. Um, but I can remember going through the hazing
Yeah.
part at a couple of stops as I kind of moved up. And I thought it was awesome. Like, I thought it was not that I thought what I was going through was awesome, but I thought it's like I'd heard about all this stuff was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to sound weird, but it was almost like losing your virginity. You know what I mean? Like, you've
Yeah.
thought about this and it's like, oh my God, now I get to get stuffed in the back of the bathroom on the bus with their clothes on the floor, butt naked with a bunch of my teammates.
Right.
I made it.
Right.
It terrifies me to think that this shit goes on now.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
but my point is, it's clearly, in quotation marks, team building / hazing is a big part of our hockey culture.
Mhm.
And I think, based on what we've tried to do to eradicate it, when I read this, my thought was, clearly just saying it has to stop isn't working.
Correct.
Clearly, we need education around, here's some other outlets, and be proactive. My point is that we need to offer some healthier outlets
Yeah.
as team building alternatives, and we need to get it in the hands of coaches and associations and say, this isn't a maybe thing. Everybody's got to do this, because this is gonna stop the other stuff, the BS, from going on. Because if we leave it up to the players, clearly we have too much data. Like, we don't need to question if the players are going to do it properly. And I'm not throwing any
No.
players or young people under the bus, but clearly, if it's up to the players, the way it's done most of the time is not healthy. So we gotta get in front of it. And my thing was, I'm like, man, at this year's conference, that's going to be a priority. We need to find somebody that can talk about
Yeah.
team building and offer some quality solutions that are actionable and accessible to youth hockey programs.
I totally agree. I mean, I guess I will challenge you a little bit on the player side, because I think if we
Okay.
can get to a point where, again, we we am I think there's two parts to it. I think there's, because we it's interesting. This isn't foreign to teams, and it's certainly not
No.
foreign to hockey players to talk about, you know, the kind of culture we want in our room, and what we'll stand for and what we won't stand for. And then, if Brad Marchand trips Timothy Liljegren in the corner and nothing happens, well, what's our what's our reaction going to be? What's our pushback going to be? So that's as old as hockey itself, right? So, but that's all about saying what's the standard, right? What are we willing to accept and what we aren't willing to accept? And Aaron, I'm sure you've been on some great teams, but you've also been on some not so great teams. I have, anyway, and and certainly some of that is talent, some of that is execution, but it's also about, you know what your standards are, what is and again, you would hear this about being late to practice. I'm sure when you were coaching, you guys had, again,
Yeah.
if you weren't 5 minutes early, you're late, right? Um, so those are standards, and I think that's largely where I think the work with that Sheldon was referring to was about saying, this is what we stand for as a group, this is what we think is acceptable and is not. And and I think I think you'd agree that wherever you set the bar, whether it's high or whether it's low, people will meet that standard. It's if it's a low standard, fine. If it's a high standard, we'll get there. But you know what I mean? Like I really think, like, and I that's where I'm hoping the sport goes. We need people in leadership positions, especially with young people, to be setting that standard. But I also hope going forward that we do have um, players involved in that determining what we as a group are about. You know what I mean? As much about the you know the protect your teammate and show up to practice on time as behavior in the room or on the bus or wherever, right? And I'm gonna, before you go, I'm gonna throw
Yeah.
one more thing at you. We are getting, you know, we have a risk management officer who manages code of conduct complaints. We've got complaints that are going to Hockey Canada's independent third party, the Safe Sport. We're going through that process. I will tell you, we're getting more complaints, more of these allegations than ever before. Okay. So
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
for sure. And even over the 2 years with ITP, Hockey Canada's just released some numbers. They, there's been an increase. The question, is, oh crap, we're going the wrong way. There's been an increase. So
There's
things
no
are
way we're going the wrong way.
okay, but the numbers are going up. That, are we going the wrong way? We're seeing, the education isn't isn't making any kind of impact, or is it? And it's probably a combination, but or is it people are more comfortable with submitting an
Yeah.
allegation. People are more aware of what that process is. There's a place outside your team association, even outside the OMHA, where you can elevate things, and and they feel more comfortable having a voice. It's not one or the other. It's both. We have a lot of work to do, but I would like to think that the latter is also happening. That there is a that people are more willing to come forward when something doesn't jive with what the code of
Well,
conduct, the standard, whatever that is.
And I'm just looking up the report right now, but I know Hockey Canada just released
They
its
did.
report.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it was it fair to say it was basically we had like 1 year of data, correct?
Yeah, we're into our second year. Exactly.
Yeah, so we're
Yeah.
in year two. So this
Yeah.
is the data from last year, and
Yeah.
it referenced all the reports. And I think one thing, just the commentary again, this is something I feel strongly about because I mean, you referenced like, is the problem getting worse or is it not being fixed? I think we just have
Yeah.
to acknowledge that when we when there hasn't been an outlet to report anything other than
That's
going
it.
to a news outlet, like we can't all of a sudden take that data and say like there's nothing to compare it to. So of course it's going to seem like it's gone up. I think, and I'm
Yeah.
not listen. I think that we're doing it is awesome. It's important, but I would say that, I think I say this and really stress it just for people in your position that I know are doing a ton of work to create better cultures and environment around our sport. That I think it's definitely we're miles and miles and miles ahead of where we were, not too long ago in terms of, again, just sort of getting in front of some of these incidents and creating a safer space for young athletes. But, it's, I think your point about, letting the players lead is a really good one. I'm with you on that. And, just as you said that, my mind went to like, this is where it's going to be really, really important for coaches, for minor hockey associations. Like, there's going to be some really creative and unique ways that people come up with on how to do team building. We got to share this information because I think too often when this comes up, we just sort of we kind of go to everybody and say, okay, everybody's got to come up with their own solution. And it's like, well, maybe everybody just needs one really good one and we can all do the same thing. Like who cares? Like we got a good solution that's working. Let's get that information in the hands of everybody. So just to really encourage everybody that as you go through this, to share this information. But again, I do think that we're we're learning a lot about our sports history and where we're coming
Yeah.
from. Some of the skeletons are coming out of the closet right
Sure.
now, and that's not fun. But again, um, every sport, every industry has some skeletons in the closet. This is normal, and I think we just gotta. I just again, I push back because sometimes I just hear in the back of my mind people are like hockey sucks or hockey's bad. I'm like, no, it's
Right.
not. No, it's not. Because if that's the case, then gymnastics sucks and soccer sucks. Like we should just keep our kids, locked in their bedrooms.
Yeah. Bubble wrap. Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, there's lots of good stuff here. I think there's a lot of good work being done. Um, but this is going to be a continuous work in progress.
That to me is for sure what like like it never, I reference box checking. It never becomes a check box to say, well, we're done with that, right? Like this is ongoing. And I mean, we've had, we've had emphasis in the past on um checking from behind became
Yeah.
very focused, right? Very
Yeah.
focused.
Yeah.
Now and then that transition into head contact. We're getting away with head contact. Slew footing is one that's kind of raised you know its profile a bit, and we've got an emphasis on that, and that'll go out to coaches, it'll go out to officials.
Yeah.
We're cutting down on this, right? And it's fantastic, and that's made a difference over time. But this is one that it's not like we don't put an emphasis and then we're on to the next one. Like this is a all timer, right? In terms of, and again, I put all this under safety. We started with talking about neck guards, but this is about managing risk, about creating a safe environment where people are going to have a great time, learn a sport, be able to do it with teammates or a group or a class, and um, and are going to be able to have a great time. Because you're right. And I'm gonna get on. This is my soapbox. It's hockey is fun, right? And that's
Yeah.
we're shouting that from the
Yeah,
rooftops
and
right now.
and again, I think
Yeah,
but it's a great soapbox to have. It's a great mantra to have
yeah,
because when these things come up, it's like that. It's really simple. It's like, does it align with hockey being fun? And if we can still do it and have fun, and then
right.
yeah, let's go ahead. And
We'll
I
have
listen.
more
I know
people
that.
having fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave you with this because I
Yeah.
believe that we've talked about this show before.
Okay.
Um, and you were a fan. Do you watch Winning Time on HBO about
Oh,
the Lakers?
absolutely.
So I'm just getting into season 2,
Oh man, it's
but
good.
there's this scene where they're on the plane, and they're on the plane, and it's like a nightclub. Like they've got the little bar, everybody's got a cocktail in the hands, like the reporters and like Pat Riley's having a cigarette. There's a
Yeah,
a haze of smoke in the plane, like nobody's wearing a seatbelt, people are walking around, and I'm like,
it's
that's
great.
what flying used to be like.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
don't think it's that big of a dramatization. It looks a lot different now. You know what I mean? Like everything, like things evolve, like things, we get better information. And you know what? Whatever we're doing today, like we all think that today we're at the ceiling of potential. Like things that we take, everyday things we do today are going to change. Hockey and sports is no different. And I think, like I said, I am a lot of these topics we talk about. Like I said, I'm putting up my hand. Like I was the Neanderthal in the room that took offense or had a problem with some of these things. I look back on that now and I'm like, why? Like it hasn't. Like what was I doing? Like why was I digging my heels in on stupid stuff? So
But Aaron, you're
I'm glad
seeing
we
it
talked about
through. But you're seeing it. You know what I appreciate, and Derek in our office has got a young guy, Ozzy's age too, and
it. Yeah.
so you know. It's a perfect opportunity to again living through your kids, or not living through your kids, but seeing it through their lens, you know what I mean? And I think the best part of all of that is like you're willing. It all comes down to people's willingness, right? So you're willing to look at it through a different lens because you're living it, right? You're living it with this little guy right now.
Hey, you know what? We're gonna close it here because I know you got some big fish to fry over there in Ontario, as do I. You know what? I can't recall where I heard this, but I've
Yeah.
adopted it as my mantra,
Ah,
but it was presented to me as a definition for mental toughness,
okay.
and it's make the next right decision. Like
Nice.
don't worry about the decision you made in the past. Don't worry about your actions in the past. Just do the next right thing with the information you have today and move forward. And I think that really applies here, like with all the stuff that we're
Sure.
talking about. It's like we got new information today. Let's not debate what happened in the past or the old. Like let's just make the next, as leaders, make the next right decision. So,
I love it.
man, this was a great show. I'm glad we got to dive
Yeah.
into this. I'm just gonna throw this out there too, and I don't know if
Shoot.
any of our listeners will chime in, but be it on social media, via email. I'd be really curious to know how people like it. Like I love it when you and I just jump on here, just the two of us, and wax poetic. But I'd love to know our listeners what their
Awesome.
thoughts are on this. So if anybody has any opinions, either way, would love to hear it.
Right.
Just drop a message on any of the OMHA or the Coach's Site social channels when these episodes are released, or shoot an email. You can find me on LinkedIn. And other than that, if we don't chat with you before the holidays, hope everybody has a very,
Yeah.
very Merry Christmas, and stay safe out there, and have fun.
Have fun.